Hey everyone, welcome to the stream. We have with us today Dave Tyner, who was with us last week. He still, parked his F-14 behind him.
That's right.
And joining us today is Bubba, who's going to help us talk about USD layers. And this is something that's been highly requested, so I'm really excited to get down into getting started and how life-changing using USD layers can be, especially for your workflow. So also joining us today is Maddie, who yesterday did his first code with me on our community Discord, and it was awesome. Looking forward to more of those in the future. I really learned a lot. And so, Edvard, do we have anything that we want to announce?
Well, I guess the big thing is a huge round of congratulations to everyone who entered the Made in Machinima contest.
Yes.
Just wrapped up on Monday evening. So many fantastic submissions come in. We saw them trickle in throughout the month, but definitely in the last couple of days. As Vincent Brisebois always tells us, that's when people are gonna show their magic. So, and that is exactly what happened. The best place to see them before we announce the winners, you can check out people's submissions online on social media by looking for the hashtag Made in Machinima. You can also jump on over to the Omniverse Discord server, and we have a channel there called Contest Machinima, and that's where a lot of users were posting questions and getting feedback while they were working on their arts, and they posted their final shorts there also. So it's a lot of fun. So congratulations to everybody. I think I've heard more than one person say that the contest was really helpful for them, really to be able to understand how to work with Machinima, and they had a lot of fun doing it. A lot of people also saying that they're going to continue working on their short and make new versions.
Yes.
So that's pretty cool. So I just really love the variety we got, and so it's really it's, as Wendy often says, it's really very inspiring to us when we see these creators.
Absolutely.
So that's great. The other thing we're working on right now, actually, we just had a couple meetings on it today, but we are going to be at SIGGRAPH this year. So we're going to actually be hosting our Omniverse user group there. But don't worry if you're not planning to attend SIGGRAPH. Attendance is still not going to be the same what it usually is, but we're going to be streaming everything. Thanks to a technical team and Wendy, who are working together. We're going to be streaming our user group on Twitch and YouTube, so right on these channels now. So you won't miss any of the action. If you are planning on coming, please get in touch with me or Wendy, and we
Yes.
set up a time to meet up and hang out while you're there. But that's going to be a lot of fun. So, and definitely, feel free to register to SIGGRAPH whenever you have a moment, and either virtually or for physical attendance. So lots of, I think NVIDIA is presenting more papers than they have ever presented before, if I remember correctly. So a lot of interesting industry news will be and research will be showed off. In just a little bit over a month from now. So it's going to be very exciting. Wendy and I will be there. Maddie will be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Uh, so Bubba will be there.
Woo.
Dave Tyner will not be there. I don't know
No.
what's going on, Dave.
Yeah.
I'll be there virtually.
Oh,
I'll be
you
there
okay?
virtually. Yes.
So anyway, so that's a lot of fun. So that is that's the main thing. But we should just go ahead and get right into everything. And why don't we start with Maddie actually because people who might be just jumping into this stream, and not clear on what USD is, what's the what's the importance of it. What would you say to them, Maddie?
So yeah, today we're talking about USD, Universal Scene Description. It was pioneered at Pixar, and the idea was that you could have first it allowed artists to send data between applications. You could write some data out, open it in another application, and it looks exactly like what you had before. The other part of it is that animated films that work in departments. You have the animation department, the modeling department, the effects department, and everybody is able to contribute their parts of the movie, their contribution to a shot, for example, without collaborating on each other, without worrying about overwriting somebody else's work. So it's this data format that enables collaboration. It's also an API that allows you to read and write this data from the applications that you're working in. And then the third part is this Hydra, which is this viewport that allows you to then plug in any renderer that you want. So we have our RTX renders, but you could have Arnold or Cycles from Blender. And so that would be the third component of universal scene description. And now what NVIDIA has done with Omniverse is we've taken this collaboration aspect, and now we're saying, well, no, yeah, we want you to collaborate, but now you can collaborate in real time. So somebody can be working on a scene or a stage, is what we call it in USD, and you can have multiple people working on it from different applications, all contributing to one bigger picture. So that's what's exciting about USD and what we're going to be learning about today.
And if people want to learn more, there's actually a great course on the DLI website, Deep Learning Institute. It's totally free and it only takes a few hours, and that really walks you through everything. So we'll post a link in the chat. Okay, so now to get USD out of the way, what about the second part of the show or topic of the show, which is layers? And Mr. Tyner, I think you're the best person to speak of that.
Great. Thanks, Admir. Thanks, Maddie. Thanks, everybody. So, yeah, so layers. Layers in USD, it's kind of a whole different concept you got to get your mind around. It's not like in USD we have layers, we have references, and we have payloads. And we're going to be really focusing on layers today, but you should know that a layer is just a USD file, a reference is just a USD file, a payload is just a USD file, but with a couple different functions and functionality associated with them. So layers really require planning, right? You don't want to like start a production project in Omniverse using layers without having first gone through it quite a bit so that you understand it. The great thing about layers is that it does enable live collaboration across teams and geographies and everything like that. Everyone can collaborate in real time with each other from anywhere, as long as everyone has access to the Nucleus server. But there's some competency required. So the layers are very similar to Photoshop. Not exactly, but they're a lot more similar to Photoshop than they are to like Max or Maya. Max or Maya is like a scene hierarchy, kind of like how to organize your scene, but USD layers are a lot different than that. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to go through. I don't know if you can see. Can we see my screen?
Yeah, let me pull that up.
Great. Yeah, and I have a very exciting cube on there that you should be able to see. All right. And one thing that we're going to look at too is layers. The layer workflow is super powerful, but it can also be a little bit dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. Like, it's kind of like we don't have a lot of guardrails yet. So you have to know what you're doing with layers. You have to know, when you delete something, whatever, how it'll affect the rest of the stage, and we're going to look at some of that today. All right, so what I have up here is just a very simple stage. I have these, just a cone, a cube, and a sphere, right? And they're in my stage's layers, and then I also have another stage down here, which is my teapot master. So let's go ahead and look at the layer panel here to start. And you get the layer panel up by going to Window, Layer, and that should pop up. It'll probably pop up and look a lot like that. And if you're going to be working with layers, you really do need to have this layer panel up and visible so that you understand things like what your authoring layer is, what changes you made to the stage might be affecting might be affecting sublayers and things like that. So have them split screen so you know what you're looking at here. So we'll just go across the top. Search, obviously you can search for anything in the layer stack. That comes in handy when you're searching for changes that have been made to your stage, and those changes are stored in something called a delta, which we're going to look at. Right here we have auto authoring. That's what AA is. We're going to skip that for now. We have your save icon, which is pretty pretty standard. You'll see, I'll talk about it a little later, but these save icons are different from each other. So pressing the top one here in the toolbar is going to save everything in your layer stack. It's the same as file saving. But you can also, if you've changed a layer or changed something on a layer in your stack, you're going to see these icons turn blue. So for example, if I were to take the sphere here and I make that my authoring layer, and jumping ahead a little bit, and I just move that sphere out, you see my icon here turns blue. And that means that this is in a save state. And if I press that button, it's going to push that save back through to the sphere layer. So anytime you see a blue icon next to a layer, you really want to understand why that save icon has turned blue, what has changed in that layer, because if you just haphazardly click save because it's like, okay, I don't like seeing that blue, click save, it's going to push the change back down into your into the source layer. So just be aware of that. So L and G here, this has to do with muting. So USD has its own jargon. It has its own way of describing things. And so a lot of people are going to call this hide and unhide. This is actually muting and unmuting layers. And the L and G refer to local or global. So if I were to say mute my sphere here, it's going to disappear. But since I'm in local mode, when I reopen this stage, it's going to be unmuted. If I save it, if I'm in global mode and I mute it and I save it and reopen it, it's going to be muted until you unmute it. So that's what the L and G are. And then next to that, we have the live sync option. And there's a couple options here. If you select the little tiny triangle there down below, you have always on. And what always on does is it will live sync all of your layers and all of your layers sublayers. So obviously layers can have sublayers, and those sublayers can have sublayers, and you can get nested pretty deep. And a little bit later, we'll look at the AEC example of how we put that together. You have toggle off, which is going to turn off live sync, and then toggle on, which is just going to be, well, if I click it from here, it's going to turn on all of the layers to be in live sync, but their sub layers will not be. And so you just have to decide how you want to work. Generally, with a small stage like this, it's no problem. I can work in always on, and I think I'll fetch latest. Okay, so this is a great example. So I turned on always on. It says, hey, there's a merge conflict, meaning the stage has changed. The stage has changed, and do I want to save my changes the way they are, or do I want to fetch what's on disk? Because I have my blue icons here, which means we're in a save state. But what I want to do is I want to ignore all that, and I want to.
I'm glad you did that, Dave, because I have that sphere loaded on my screen, and if you had not fetched but saved, you would have wiped out all the things that I had done to that sphere in my scene.
You did things to the sphere in your scene? Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so that's sort of that up there, and then we have if you click on the hamburger here, we call this the hamburger. Bubba hates it, but I'm going to call it the hamburger forever because it looks like a hamburger if you squint.
I didn't say I hated it. I like hamburgers.
All right, fair enough. So here you have a bunch of different options for your layer. You can show the session layer, which your session layer has your cameras and some other settings. You can modify your perspective camera this way if you really want to. That's fine. I'll turn that off for now. And then we have other things like show info notifications. So sometimes you'll notice like a little blue or a yellow icon appear down here telling you, warning you of something. You can turn that on and off there. Show missing references. This is where auto authoring layers comes in. So yeah, so that's interesting, auto authoring layers. So generally, when you want to work non-destructively in layers, you're going to have your base layer, and then you're going to have a layer on top of that, which is going to contain changes that you've made to that base layer. So for example, and this all has to do with authoring layers. So whatever your authoring layer is, that's the layer that's being written to whatever you do. So if I open up world here in my layer tab, you're going to see I have cone, cube, and sphere. And these little triangles here are called deltas. And those deltas represent a change that's been made to something that doesn't live in my root layer. So all of these layers obviously don't live in my root layer. So when I make a change, they're going to appear as a delta. So I think what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to right click and delete these deltas, which is deleting the changes. And then this will be easier to show you. So if I want to grab my cube and I want to slide it out this way, you can see a delta has been created for that cube in the root layer. I have not affected my cube layer at all. It's still, sitting at 0 where it should be, and whoever's working in the cube can continue to work on the cube, and my modifying it from a different authoring layer is going to prevent those changes from being pushed back down. Now I can push those changes back down because this is why you need to have your layer tab up, because it can get, should have closed Slack, because it can get kind of confusing if you're just working and you don't realize you're working in a different authoring layer, and now my sphere contains all the changes to my cube, and oh my gosh, what do I do? So it's real easy. You can just grab your delta, whatever the change is, and just drag it down into your cube layer, and that's going to push that change back down into your cube layer if that's something you want to do. Generally, you don't want to do that. If you want to make a change to your source layer, you're going to make it the authoring layer, and then everything you do on the stage is going to be pushed back into that cube layer. All right. So am I making sense so far?
Yes.
Perfect. So so now what we're going to do, as I look into my stage, sorry, my cheat sheet. Oh yes. So this is also, not sure if I covered it, but I'll say it again if I didn't. Everything in USD is path based, right? And it's the path in the stage, and that's all that the session cares about, is what's going on in the stage. So for example, right now, and Bubba, you have the sphere open, right?
I do, but I am not, I don't have my little cloud turned green, so I'm not live syncing with you.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and live sync?
Okay.
Sphere.
I've done that now.
Okay, so right now Bubba has sphere.usd open, and he's live syncing. You can see the little flashy bits up here. And he's live syncing to my stage. And because I have his USD in my stage as a layer and I'm live syncing it, I can see all the changes that he's making. So right now he's moving the sphere out, moving it around. And Bubba, why don't you just move that back to 0? Great. So I'm going to move the sphere out. Now I move it. He doesn't see that change. And why doesn't he see that change? Bubba, why don't you see that change?
Because you're making a delta in your root layer, which does not propagate back to the USD file of the sphere, which I have open on my side.
Amen. 100%. Yes. So because back to the past, because USD is path-based, if Bubba were to rename sphere to cube.
Is that my cue? Is that my cue to do so?
Yeah, that is your cube.
My cube to do so.
Good one. Good one.
There, I just renamed it cube.
Okay. So you can see now that my cube has turned into the sphere, or sorry, what has happened here? You changed the cube. Let's go back and do that again.
It disappeared.
Disappeared, right?
Why did the cube disappear?
Because
because it's
the sphere
duh.
type. Yeah.
See,
That is
this is the
correct.
thing. Yes, because it doesn't care that it's a sphere. It only cares what it's named. And so if Bubba changes that back to a sphere, you're going to see the cube reappear. And that happens because sphere is sitting on top of cube, right? And therefore it wins in the battle of what is cube, and
Yeah.
so if that makes sense, that everything is path based.
The
Yeah,
layer
go
on top has a stronger opinion than the one on the bottom. We
Precisely.
Maddie,
So-
everybody has a strong opinion.
Good one. Okay, so yeah, so that is another USD term called opinion, and we sometimes refer to them as option layers, right? So if I were to take this, I have an option layer that's empty here, just sitting in my content browser, and I drag that into the stage, which also, by the way, I can just click this insert sublayer and browse to it and do it this way, but since I already have it, great. So what I want to do now is, now that I have my pistas, and let's say that these are all coming from a DCC tool like Max or Maya, and I still have artists working on them, but I want to start my layout of these things. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to grab my my cube and slide it over, and I'm going to grab my sphere and slide it over. And you can see I've made my option layer my authoring layer. And so now I have changes on that, and let's just move that guy out a little bit. And then I also have a cube here, sorry, a teapot that's live synced from 3ds Max, which we'll look at in a second. Okay.
Hey, Dave, with your permission, I'm just going to add a light into my scene because I don't have a light in my scene. I only have the sphere, so it's pretty dark on my side. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. And I'm going to go ahead and hide my default light there. Oh, default light, hide. Ah, dadgummit. See, this is the thing. You got to know what layer you're working in here. So if I want to do that, because my root layer contains default light, and it was overriding the change that I was trying to make to default light in my option layer. So now I'm in my option layer, and I have these things laid out the way I want, and Bubba can continue working in the sphere. He can move his light around. He can change the color of it. He can do whatever he wants. He can add other shapes, whatever, to it. But now I have my layout here. I kind of like how this triangle effect. But then someone else is going to come in with another opinion. And in their opinion, it shouldn't look like that, maybe. It should look like this. Like our cone should be up, and we should do more of a north-south thing. And so I like that layout a lot better. And so what we can do now is we can collaboratively, we can look at it. We can say, okay, what do you like? Well, I like my option 1. So if I mute layer 2, the last changes in the stack, the latest opinion that's not muted wins, and we get to look at that, and we get to look at both of those. And so this is all done non-destructively, right? So I think you can probably glimpse the power of working like this in a collaborative environment where these are DCC assets and they're being worked on in real time by people, or not. You don't have to have your layers live synced if you want. You can right click and reload them if you want. There's a whole bunch of options here. What you can do, set authoring layer. You can create sub layers. You can merge down. You can flatten sub layers. So if we have this to the point where, like, hey, I like this the way it is. I do not want to drag this temp stage into another stage and have all these, these stacks of layers. I can flatten them. So it's going to flatten them. So I only have a root layer, and whatever's in the stage is in the stage. And I can watch also, you can see Bubba, as he works in his sphere stage, he's creating lights and doing things like that. Additionally here, you can't see it, but I have 3ds Max open in another window where I have my my teapot. And so I can, move it around in Max, which is something that I probably don't want to do. I can do a whole lot of stuff here. I can apply modifiers. So if I go in, I add and edit poly, and actually I want to dumb this down to be 4 segments. So there, we'll look at that, and then I can apply a modifier on top of that. Let's say Greeble. Everybody loves the Greeble. And Greeble. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There it is. Yeah. and so I can adjust, I can make adjustments. I can bend it. Whatever you want to do in Max. The point is you're working in Max, and well, get there. There we go. Want it to be a little bigger. Okay, so there you have it. And another thing that should be noted, Bubba is working in Create. I'm working in Machinima, but I'm also working in 3ds Max, and we're live synced across all of it.
Dave,
So,
I've got a question.
Okay.
I think you showed two ways that you could work here. Is one is you could contribute data from different sources, different apps or people, and then the other thing that you showed with the option layers is I could try different approaches, right? Different setups, and then toggle them on and off to see which one I like better.
Absolutely.
2 different uses of layers.
Yep.
Very cool.
Okay. Good. I thought there was a question. I was getting ready. It's like, okay, what's the question? Okay. So we've gone through that. Cones and spheres, authoring layers, yes. All right. So let's go through now. And Bubba, is there anything more we can do here? Anything you can think of?
You want to talk about auto authoring?
Yes. Thank you. I thought I did that, but I didn't. I showed you where the icon was, but I didn't show you what it did. So I did talk about it. Auto authoring, when it's enabled, it's going to, whatever change you make to an object on the stage, it's going to, wherever that object lives in the layer stack, it's going to push that change back into that layer. So that's something you got to be really careful about. Like I said, if I'm in my root layer here and I want to start making, let's say, material changes to this this teapot, that change that I just made is stored in my root layer. It's not stored in 3ds Max. If I wanted that material change or whatever change I make, scale, rotate, whatever, to push back into 3ds Max, then auto authoring would do that. Auto authoring would push the change that you just made back into your source layer, which might surprise the person working in that source layer, especially if that asset is being used in multiple places.
If there are any animators in our audience, they might be able to think of this something like auto key, where when you change something, it automatically gets saved like a keyframe does in auto key, which can be very frustrating sometimes. Managed properly, it's a great tool, but
yeah, you just want to be really careful. So and again, I'm going to reiterate this. If you make a change and you see that right after you make that change that several of these icons turn blue, and then you think, oh, I'm just going to click the blue save button because it'll make all the sub layers save. What you've done is you've pushed those changes back into the source layer. And like I said, if you're using this asset in multiple places, then it's going to be updated in all of those places. So you got to be careful about that. Generally, you don't want to change that. So if I want to make edits to my teapot, I have a teapot master file. I have the teapot source, which is just inheriting all of the changes I'm making from Max, and then I could make teapot edit my authoring layer and then do the changes that I want to make to the teapot in that edit layer, not in the source layer. So I know I'm being redundant about that, but it's really important. And if you play with layers, inevitably you're going to run into a situation like that. Okay, awesome. So what I would like to do is show you the AEC example of how we used layers for that project. So I'm going to go ahead and go there and there, and going to open this, and that's going to take about a minute to open. So if there's any questions or comments, criticisms.
Well, I guess, what if there are some people who may not be familiar with what AEC means?
that's a good point.
Should we define that acronym?
Yes,
It's architectural engineering and construction, right?
that's right.
So this
Architecture, engineering,
scene, this scene was set up specifically for assets related to people in those industries, right?
Yeah. So Robert Severlione and Jay Axe and I put all this together. We used Revit, Max, Rhino, and Unreal Engine to do it, and it's really pretty amazing. This is the way that we use layers to do it. It should be noted that we're still learning the best ways to use layers, and we found that this was a good way for us to use it. But really, it's so flexible. However you set up your framework of layers, it could be, like we did. It could be, Revit is a layer, Rhino's a layer, Max is a layer. It could be by discipline, that lighting and cameras and props and animation and all that other stuff. Like, it really depends on what works for you in your industry, and the kind of data you're dealing with would really depend on how you set up that how you set up your layer framework. Good question. Okay, so now we have this open, and if I just, Bubba, you can open this too.
Loading it on my side.
Okay, so if we look at this, and I'm gonna just click Shift L to hide the lights. So what we have here, we have 3 Revit projects, and these are all constructible Revit projects each. And then we have this park. This park was created in Unreal Engine and Rhino. The Revit projects were created in Revit, obviously. There's some Max in there. There's some Rhino in there. And those are all encapsulated in their own stage. So if we look at the layer stack here, we have Brownstone Demo Pack Light Layer, which contains, a couple changes with the environment, and looks like there's a paint tool delta in there. But then we have the brownstones here, and the brownstones are each independent of each other. So this brownstone layer is a top level layer, and in that we have the Revit brownstone interior, the Revit brownstone exterior, and the Rhino stairs, right? So you can see how we compiled this together by dumping the Revit layers, interior and exterior, and then the Rhino layer into the stage, into this Brownstone 01 stage, which means that wherever I drag this Brownstone 01 stage, that you can see in its, you can see all the deltas in it. So there's a bunch of changes with geometry and materials that have been updated in that particular stage, which means that anywhere I take this Brownstone 01, I'm taking all these layers with it and all the changes that I've made. So what I see is what I get. So if I want to use this in another project that's different, I can certainly do that. But it's all encapsulated inside of this one layer. And in turn, this Brownstone 01 is nested under the root layer, but it could be nested in another layer, et cetera, et cetera. It just on down the line there. And that goes the same for all of these. So if you want to look at the full stack here, you're going to see we got a lot of layers, right? And so back to the and we're gonna go inside and do a little live sync thing. But if you look at what's that?
I'm hanging out in the kitchen of the house on the end of the row there.
Thank you very much. Just hang out there for one more second, and I'll be there. So, so what you can see here is that what's really important. We had a ton of layers in here. Nested sub layers upon nested sub layers. Yet our stage here is pretty organized. And what you'll find as you work with layers is that unless you organize your layer hierarchy to be consistent, right? So everything that we want for Brownstone 01 is sitting under Brownstone 01. So if I select Brownstone 01 in the stage, I'm selecting all of Brownstone 01 here. But if I look at Brownstone 01, yes, you should have layers. Yeah. So Brownstone 01 has, the interior, the exterior, and the stair. All of those had to be organized in such a way so that the exterior, world, Brownstone 01, and then, whatever. And then the interior, world, Brownstone 01, and then whatever. Because, like I said, layers are a way to organize things, but all that the stage really cares about is the path to the thing in this in your stage panel. So rather than having just all of this sitting in the stage and you don't know what all of this belongs to, because the way Revit names things is very similar, you have to organize your hierarchies in your USD files to make sure that when you start dumping these in to other USD files, whether it's as layers, you maintain good stage hierarchy, because this can spin wildly out of control. Believe me, I've had this list be a mile long when we weren't doing this initially, and this is really a good way to work. And I think the reason you say, Dave, you're wrong, there's a Brownstone 01 stair, I think that was a limitation of Rhino. Rhino couldn't do that for some reason, so he had to call it another thing. So anyway, so this is all really a lot, I think, to take in, and might require some rewatching. And the more you play with layers, you might want to come back to this and kind of reference things that I was saying and be like, oh, that's where that is. Oh, that's why I can't change that thing. Oh yeah, I forgot to show you. Well, I'll just tell you. So in my root layer, if I want to change something in Brownstone 01, and my root layer is my authoring layer, and so I do that, and it creates a delta for Brownstone 01. If I want to then work in an authoring layer that's below any layer that contains that delta, you're going to see it doesn't move, it doesn't update, it seems to be frozen in space. Like, Create's not frozen, but that thing is frozen, you can't do anything with it. When that happens, whether it be adding a material or changing the time of day or moving a camera or whatever, the issue 99.99% of the time is going to be that there is a delta living above the layer that you're in, and it's forming a stronger opinion, which means it's blocking you from seeing that update in your stage. So know that. It's important. Okay. Now, onto the kitchen.
Hello.
Okay.
Welcome to my kitchen.
Hi. Thank you. I'll take a caramel.
You're just in time for our remodeling session.
Okay, perfect. So what we're going to do now is I am going to live sync my root layer, and I'm going to live sync this AEC option kitchen layer.
And I should do the same, correct?
You should, yes. And we're going to watch as Bubba does some fancy redesign on the kitchen.
Now, Bubba, you're not streaming your screen. If you want me to share it,
I'll let you know, Wendy.
okay.
Right now, because I went live connect to the scene that Dave has, it's recopying and compiling the entire stage on my side, so it's taking just a minute. It's syncing up.
Basically, he's got to
Okay.
reload. He's got to reload the stage, and that can happen when you have a big stage with a lot of things in it, and you try to live sync something. You'll see there's going to be a hang up. Oh, I get a notification here that Kate Lombardi has just joined, which is great.
That's me.
Um,
I'm just Bubba. Nobody knows my last name.
okay, except now.
Too late.
So that's what I have here. Good. Everything's good. All right. So Bubba, why don't you make your
Start changing some stuff.
Yeah, make your AEC option kitchen your authoring layer.
Yep. I'm just gonna make some color adjustments to some of the materials in here.
Get rid of that boring white. Let's see some. Oh, nice. And you see that flashing is it's the path tracer. I can turn that off. Cool. So we got some blue cabinets. That's nice. And you notice I'm catching all the changes that he's making. I'm not doing anything. I'm just the observer here. And he changed the backsplash to terracotta.
Yep, I got terracotta tiles. I'm gonna scale it up a little bit.
Okay. Oh, did you rotate them too?
I did.
Nice. Nice. Okay, that looks great. And so this is awesome for a kind of a reviewer workflow. You can use Create or Machinima. You can also use View, which is our View application, and that is more AEC focused. Actually, it's got a bunch of different, well, same tools, a little bit different layout, but it's kind of easier interface on somebody that doesn't want to get into all the technical X and O's. Oh, looks like you changed the countertop here.
Did, but I'm going to change the scale a little bit because that UV is way too big.
Okay, I'm watching.
There we go.
And action. Okay, nice. So, and you may have seen this from a demo video we had. I can go through now and just start grabbing NVIDIA assets, and I have my root layers, my authoring layer, but that's fine for example purposes. What is this, dancers?
When you have a sec, you actually also zoom in on how you scale the material. We're getting a question on how that was done.
Okay. Yeah, that's Bubba's screen.
Yeah, sure. If you zoom into the backsplash back there, Dave, I've got the terracotta. And Wendy, if you want to share my screen, I've got the material here selected of the terracotta, and there's just a tab, a cascading tab here with the texture scale. So
yeah, you're not sharing your screen,
Okay.
Oh,
so I can't
thought
switch
was.
to it.
My bad.
I think Dave was following along though.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh yeah, that's great, Dave. You can do that.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, so generally what you do is you select the whatever has that material. You see the material in the list here. You press the over arrow to go to it, and then you scroll down to the bottom here, and you have texture scale, texture rotate, translate, other things like that. And by the way, all of those are keyable. So if you want to make animations of your texture doing funny things on the wall, like Bubba's doing right now, you can totally do that with the curve editor by adding keys to the texture. So that's a cool thing to do with like water. And you want the ripples to move, you can just easily do that by keying the translation on the texture. So yeah, so that's how you do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. And it's also important to note that everything that I'm doing here, Bubba can also see in real time, because I'm working in the root layer, which is live synced. He's working in the option kitchen layer, which is live synced, and so we can see what each other is doing. If he were to be working in another layer, a sub layer that was not live synced, I would not be able to see that until I right clicked and reloaded that particular layer that he's working on, or reopen the stage, whatever it takes. Okay, so I was planning on that there would be a lot of questions here, because
there is a question right now. Actually, we touched on it a couple times, but how does version control work with this? If somebody makes what did Papa Chuck say? An oopsie. Someone makes an oopsie. How can you revert?
All right, that is a really great question, and I'm not sure that I know the answer to it off the top. But if we look at, let's look at what Bubba's working in Sphere here, because the way live sync works is that it's just always on. It's always writing to the USD file that is being live synced. So as long as something is in live sync, it's going to be written to, and whether that is, so we have these checkpoints, right? And checkpoints are basically version control. So I can see that if I go into my content browser here and I select the whatever the thing is, the USD that is being edited. Sorry, I gotta look over my microphone and through a light to see this, but we can see that Bubba's making all these changes, and I'm venturing to guess that it's not creating a version for every single move that Bubba's making, that if we were to get out of live sync mode, that last save state would be the one that is saved on disk. And if you want to revert to that, to a, you know, say you made an oopsie, destroyed the stage, which I have done quite a few times on accident, you can go to your checkpoints here, find the latest one. You can right click on it to open it to see, you know, to make sure that your oopsie isn't in that one. And then if it isn't, you can either restore the checkpoint, which is going to overwrite the one there, or you can do a save as and create a new copy of that stage, so that that doesn't contain the error. And then you'd want to take that new one and drop it in as a layer in your main stage. Either that, or you can just select the layer, and up here in the property panel, you have this layer path, and you can just repath it to your new stage by clicking that button.
Very nicely explained.
Okay.
Someone else is asking how you can check out the latitude and longitude of an object.
The latitude and longitude of an object,
I don't
we
think
don't.
I don't
Yeah,
think
we
we
can't do
have
that.
that feature. I was actually looking into it. Right now, the only extension where we do have latitude and longitude enabled is the sun study, and that allows you to put in the
Yeah.
direct location, you know, of where the sun should be positioned. But what I will do is put in a feature request for that. So
And
thank
Maddie, is
you.
that also something that someone can build as an extension on their own?
Well, there's work being done for what do you call it? Geographic coordinates system in USD. So there's research being done there. So it is coming and hopefully in a more full-fledged way.
Nice. Thank you, Wendy and Maddie.
Awesome. That would be super helpful.
I think another thing, I think it'd be worth showing Bubba's screen, because he's actually not he's not working in the same stage. He actually only has the kitchen loaded. Could we show that?
Yeah, it's his. It's on his. Yep.
Yeah,
I'm
so
not-
so you
I
can
have
see
the same-
there. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I'm not doing that. That's Dave driving, I believe.
Yeah, this is my stage.
I have the same scene loaded. I was just I was working in the kitchen.
Let me
But-
see.
But Maddie brings up a really important point, that if you're resource constrained, and that's another thing where layers come in really handy, and you don't want to open the entire stage, like this one is 11 gigabytes VRAM. So if you want to, if you have less than that, say you have like an 8 gig card, Bubba could just have opened the interior of, you know, because this is a layer, right? And we go down here, Brownstone 01, and we have these interior, exterior. He could have just opened the interior layer, interior USD file, and been working in that. And as long as I have that live synced in my stage by clicking the live sync button, then I'm gonna catch all the changes that he's making. Of course, he wouldn't want to work in that interior layer, because the next time Robert makes an update in the Revit file, he's going to push to that layer and it's going to overwrite all the changes in it. So actually, Bubba would want to be working in Brownstone 01 to make all his changes, because that's where all the deltas live. But that's a great point. Another great use case for this is something we did actually with Robert before he worked for NVIDIA. We were working on, if you look back in the collaboration videos that we have, there's going to be one of a tech center, and it's got, you know, this really beautiful room and circular seats and people and plants, and it's in Washington DC and all these things. Well, what we wanted him to do is, we didn't really know Rhino, but we wanted a Rhino aspect of that story. And so what I did was I set up an AWS server and allowed him to connect to it, push out his Rhino files to that server. And because I could see that server, but he couldn't see my server because my server's behind the firewall, but I was able to drag in his USD file as a layer into our stage, position it wherever I wanted, whatever, do whatever I wanted. But we were able to see from New York, we were able to see him working in that Rhino stage in real time through our firewall into our local stage, and it was pretty beautiful how that worked out. And I thought that was a really great use case for contractor workflows, that you don't want them to have access to all your internal stuff, but you want them to be able to contribute to your stage. That would be something you can do to make that happen. And the follow-up question to that is, great, how can I fire up an AWS stage? I don't have, or an AWS Nucleus server. I don't have that information. I know we're working on a whole bunch of cloud stuff, and so I don't think that's going to be an issue too much longer. But I just wanted to frame that use case to say that that worked out really well, and I thought that'd be a great use case for contractors. All right, Bubba, what did you do? Because I'm now spinning.
You can look over into the living room area.
Okay,
I just added a couch over there.
Did you really? Oh, there it is. So it's loading. And that's another cool thing about the live collaboration is talking about what you're doing. If you start to try and work over each other and everybody's making changes at the same time, that can be a little hectic anyway. But you can communicate in real time and say, okay, I'm going to add a thing, so everyone kind of pauses. I should also say here at the end, of course, that the way that layers work, like I said, if you have a big complicated stage and you're trying to work in live sync and you're noticing quite a bit of lag, like sessions are freezing while things are loading, and the sessions being coordinated across local sessions from Nucleus server, that can take some time sometimes, and we're working on a really new and exciting way to reduce that lag time. And I don't want to say any more about it, but if you run into that, just know that that's a problem that we're solving.
Cool. And actually, somewhat related, sorry to interrupt. We have a question. So Dave just mentioned the scene being 11 gigabytes in VRAM. In Create, how would one actually go about figuring out the performance memory stats of a scene?
That's a great question. So you can do it a couple ways. If you go here into Window, Utilities, they just changed all this. Windows Utilities, USD Pass, Statistics. This might not be the one. This will give you some data on your GPU memory, how much is being used, and what is consuming all of it. Your RTX scene will tell you, how many vertices, how many instances, lights, things like that. So you can really get in there and analyze your stage and find out, oh, I have 1 million of a certain thing, but they're not instance. I need to make sure those are instance, and that will, that'll bring down my memory consumption, things like that. But that utilities, window, utilities, and statistics will do that. Kind of what I do anyway is I can't show you because I'm only sharing this window, but I just open up Task Manager, Performance, and I look at how much, and I select GPU and look at how much of my GPU memory is being used right now. And granted, that's not going to be all Create, but at the end of the day, it's going to tell you how much your machine is using. So if you have 47 tabs of Chrome open, that's going to be pulling a bunch of GPU. If you have images from Microsoft Image Viewer, I've noticed that will take a bunch of GPU RAM for some reason. But that you can look at the statistics here to find out how you can optimize your scene. But I usually go to Task Manager to find out, okay, how much is this? How much is my machine using? And then I'll start closing things out that might be consuming memory.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
There was another question early on about being able to set up different environments, wanting to do like day and night scenarios.
Uh-huh.
How would you do that?
I would do that with layers. So I would create a night scenario option layer, and then make all your changes. Do your environment, add your lights, change all your settings, and then that all those changes will be stored as long as that is your authoring layer. So yes, create the new layer, double click it, make it your authoring layer, and then make the changes you want to make. And then the cool part is you can just drag that into any stage that contains that thing, whatever's in your stage, and as long as that's sitting above it, then it's going to inherit all of those changes. So these are very flexible options are in the way that you can move them around. But yeah, that's how I would do that. I would do that in an option layer.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay,
Another question came, let me see. So if you duplicate a prop with the same material, can you tell, is there a way, and you can tell it is a duplicate, is there a way to offset the copies to look unique? I don't know if that makes sense. Let me read that again. Do you understand?
Well, to me, offset equals translate. Like, yes.
Maybe if you wanted to do a translate of a texture so that you're looking up a different section of the texture to make it look unique.
I think that's the question.
I think maybe that could be what is being suggested.
Yeah, you can make changes to. Oh, here's a good one. Bubba. Shoot, we don't have time, but it's really important that I show you this.
Go ahead.
So we're gonna do it. We're gonna push through. Is that okay?
No one's gonna cut us off.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
You take all the time you need, man.
Okay. So let's talk about that. So offset, and Bubba, we're gonna open. Well, I'm just gonna open the test stage again. But
Okay. Tell me what you need me to do, if so.
Okay. So you can change references, right? So if you duplicate a reference, you can move that duplicate wherever you want. You can change materials on it. What you can't do is you can't delete the contents of a reference. So references won't allow you to do that, and it'll give you an error, something about ancestral prim, can't do it. But, and this is where layers are very unique, and you just gotta really make sure that you know what you're doing. Because generally what I'll do, I'm working in Max or something, and I have my stage, and I'm like, oh, hey, look, there's a cube here. Well, I don't care. I don't want that cube. It's ugly. So I'm going to get rid of it. And I delete it from my stage. Look, no cube. Problem solved, right? But look at my layer stack now. I have blue save icons on all of these layers. And what I just did, without knowing that I just did that, is I just deleted that cube from the cube stage. So the next time the cube guy comes in and opens up cube.usd, there's not going to be anything in there because I've deleted it from his
Dang
stage.
you, Tyner!
Yeah.
Does it flash your name really big so they know who did it?
Maybe. I think if I click save on this is a good test. Let's see. Okay, so I click save on the cube layer. It just pushed that change. So now if Bubba opens up cube, there's going to be nothing there.
Oh, you didn't tell me I'd be ready to do that.
And if I look at cube, yeah, okay. So when I did that, when I saved the layer, it created a checkpoint for that action. So now this latest checkpoint has the deleted cube, and if I want the cube back, we would need to restore the previous checkpoint that has the cube in it. But I really want to reinforce that, because well, it's deleted now, so I can't. If I grab this cone and I bring it in as a reference, like I can move it around, I can Control D duplicate it, I can change materials on either one to make them very unique. But what I can't do is I can't delete it. So if I click delete, I get a message here saying cannot remove ancestral prim. And what I also can't do is I can't take my sphere and move it into my cone reference. Shit, I can. Rewind. Oh, no, wait, I didn't. I just moved it underneath. Whew, okay. So, wait, can I? Shouldn't be able to. I did. Okay. So I have something to learn about references here. But anyway, I cannot delete the contents of a reference. when that reference is on another stage, and but I guess I can add to
Well,
it.
Dave, I think you're parenting it under it, but I don't think that reference knows anything about what you just added.
Interesting. Yeah, so we'd have to open up Cone to see if yeah, it doesn't, because it's the copy. All right. See, all of us are still learning, and you know, we're making improvements. I don't think that was possible before, but now it is possible. To be honest, I go back and forth. I work with layers sometimes, big projects, multi-user projects, multi-application projects. I'm working with layers. Otherwise, I'm probably going to be working with references and payloads, which we should do another live stream about payloads. Here's another way. Go ahead.
I was just going to say payloads are very useful, but another discussion, definitely.
Yeah. So I want to look at this file, which is this Goose animations file. So this is from our Top Goose machinima. This is the Goose. And I mentioned this briefly in the last live stream, but this is another way you can use layers, which is pretty handy. Let me turn off skeleton. All right, so the way I got this Goose from TurboSquid, and I'm a Max person. I'm not a Maya person. With Maya, you can go through, you can create a USD scale, you can create USD animations, and export from there. In which case, you really wouldn't need to do this. But in this case, I had a bunch of different FBX files that contained all the various animations of the Goose, but they all contained the Goose mesh as well. So if I had brought those into the stage, see here they are, all the animations. If I brought that into the stage, I would have had, you know, however many, 10 different references of the Goose, and any change that I wanted to make, materials or otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to make. I would have to make for every Goose in the stage, because it's all, you know, it's all the meshes. But by using layers, I was able to bring in all the different animations that contain the mesh too, but that the top layer in the stack is the only one that it really cares about in terms of the mesh, because again, it is the G Canada Goose 0 is the top, you know, the path to that object in the stage is the same for every one. So by doing that, I was able to get all the animations into a single stage using layers, but I'm only ever using the single mesh and materials of the Goose at the top of the stack. Does that make sense?
That's clever. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's another way, you know, a single artist can work with layers. You're free to work with layers all you want, if single or multi-user or whatever. But for me, if I'm just working by myself, it seems that I don't use layers that much. But if I'm working with a team, then I'm going to be using layers, because I'm going to want to do the live syncing and the mostly for review, set dressing, things like that. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you.
Very cool.
And Finn, any other questions? I'm happy to answer, but I think we've melted enough minds through this.
Yeah, I think there might be a couple questions, but what I'm going to suggest is we all head over to the Omniverse Discord server, where we can kind of take questions live, and nothing gets lost in translation. So that channel is really easy to get to. If you go to Discord, discord.gg/NVIDIA Omniverse, you can join our server if you're not already there. And there's a channel specifically called Community Voice Chat. So you can hop in there. We'll jump in there now. But before we do, I want to say a big thank you to Dave and Bubba for walking us through this. This has been a fantastic workflow, I think, tutorial for everybody. Answered some great questions. And of course, thank you to Maddie and the excellent Wendy for this amazing job of juggling all these screens and live streaming at the best resolution we can. And thank you most of all to all the audience participating and asking the great questions as we dive into USD. And you'll see there's going to be a lot of focus from us on educating on USD. So look out for more of these shows in the future. So thanks everybody. So if you have time, come on over to Discord. We'll meet you there.
Come say hi. Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.